Well, hello, 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 everybody. This is Reverend Karen with Fearlessly Feral Living coming at you with another podcast episode. And I'm broadcasting to you from the Woogie Ranch out here in rural northern Nevada, where I'm a half an hour away from the nearest gas station and the nearest grocery store. Our mission is to provide a strong and unshakable inner foundation that works for successful long term living. Our purpose is to activate inner self awareness, and our vision is a world in which everyone lives wild and free. In other words, fearlessly feral. That's how I got the name Fearlessly Feral, by the way, because I wanted to use wild and free, and the name was already taken. So we came up with Fearlessly Feral, and it fits. So, anyway, I feel like I want to apologize. I'm a little late with this podcast and the next two. This year in January, I published a podcast episode on the first section of um, the introduction to the Science of Mind textbook, the thing itself, and promised that I would do the next three sections. And I got a little distracted. Can you identify with that? I got distracted in January. Go figure. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I got really distracted and I didn't get the episodes published, but I have them ready now. So today we're going over the second section in the Introduction to the Science of Mind textbook. And so I apologize for being late, but they're going to be here today. It's February 3rd as I'm recording this. You'll get this one today. You may get the next one today, but for sure tomorrow or Wednesday. But they're ready to go. I just have to record them. So, yeah, we're in the second week of our review of the Introduction of the Science of Mind textbook. Now, I really love this introduction. It's before the actual textbook begins. It's before the chapters. It's before everything. But it just takes the essence of who and what we are, what this teaching is, and it distills it down into about 37 pages. And that's absolutely amazing when you consider that the entire textbook is 600 and some odd pages. So it takes our whole teaching and distills it down into 37. So if you're new to this teaching and you have the Science of Mind textbook and you're feeling a little overwhelmed with it all, forget the text part of it for a little while. Go to the introduction and just read those first four sections. It's about 37 pages. So today we're going to dial in on that second section called The Way It Works. Now, remember last podcast episode, we talked about the thing itself. And the thing itself is that God stuff. The thing itself is God, basically, in a nutshell. This week, in talking about the way it works, we're also going to talk about making space for that thing itself, how we make space for it. And in essence, we make space for it by being open and willing to consider that we might just be a little more important in the overall scheme of things than is commonly thought. Instead of human beings having a spiritual experience, consider that we are spiritual beings here on this earth in this bag of skin having a human experience. So we're spiritual beings first, and then we go out in life and we have human experiences. So I'd like you to just don't do this if you're driving. If you're driving, just pretend to close your eyes. Close your eyes for just a moment and imagine this essential truth from the thing itself. God's nature is our nature. We are the very essence of divinity itself. And just take that in and think about it. Think about the ramifications of how you could live your life and how you would show up in this world if you knew without a doubt that you were the essence of divinity itself. Now, further imagine these truths taken from the second section, The Way It Works. that stuff that is, that God, that divine nature, it can only find an outlet through us. That's it. Otherwise, it's just ether. It's just energy. It's just out there in the world. The only way it can experience the physical is through us and through everything else physical as well, by the way. But we're talking about us here, so I'm going to stick with that. We are living, breathing manifestations of spirit. God works for us by working through us. And I like to take that a step further and say that's the only way it can work. Really, God works for us by working through us. And I get this from Ernest Holmes. He says if God is to interpret himself to human beings, he must interpret himself through human beings. So as you sit here or whatever you're doing, I listen to podcasts when I'm cleaning horse stalls. So whatever you're doing, cleaning house, doing the dishes, I don't care what it is. Imagining all these things, how does it feel for me to present these concepts to you? Are you finding it difficult to fully believe that you're indeed just a little godling? Not just, you are a little godling. You're a little teeny tiny manifestation. You're a micro of the macro of you're a micro of God running around on this earth in your earth suit with all the power and wisdom that God has. Do you have doubts? You got some yeah buts going on there? Well, of course you do. We've been indoctrinated our entire lives with this concept that God is, there's no way we can be a part of God. There's just no way. There is absolutely no way that we can do that. We've been indoctrinated with the concept that God is separate from us and bigger than us and, all that stuff. And yet, if we don't believe this to be true of ourselves, we suffer. So let me see if I can help with some of those doubts. Believe me, you're not the only one that has them. I get them still, sometimes. I know so deeply in the core of my being that I am a unique and individualized manifestation of spirit. But sometimes my humanity gets in the way. So yeah, I know these doubts. I know them. Ernest Holmes, in his book called The Hidden Power of the Bible. Now look where I'm getting this from. The Bible, folks. I'm getting this from the Bible. Okay. In Holmes, in his book, The Hidden Power of the Bible, he describes it like this. He says, spirit, in other words, God, is consciousness. Spirit makes things out of itself through some inner act upon itself. God thinks things get created, okay? Third, man is a little world within a big world. God individualizes himself through man. Hence, man's life and his word becomes creative in this world. And he uses the word individualized, which means that we are each unique. Each one of us expresses ourselves in a unique way. And how we express ourselves is God in action in our life. Oneness does not mean sameness, folks. How we express ourselves is an outpicturing of what we believe to be true about ourselves and the world around us. And what we believe about ourselves is what manifests in our lives. And again, we are here so that God can experience the physical world. Otherwise, again, it would just be this ether floating around in space with no anchor. We are the anchor. We are the anchor. We're little godlings running around on this earth. Another Ernest Holmes quote, man is a little world within a big world. We're the micro, God is the macro. We're all one. We just picture it in different ways. We just manifest it as different ways. So we're spiritual, we're physical manifestations of God. And just like God thought us into creation, so do we think the circumstances of our lives into creation. because we have the same power that God has, because we are the same power that God is. There is no separation between us and God. This is what oneness is. And how it works is according to our beliefs. And then Holmes asks in this question, no, he asked this in the previous section. Why then is man weak, poor, and afraid? Because of our beliefs. Again, we've been told for generations that we do not, could not, will not ever have the same power as God. We've been told it so often, it's become a part of our very culture. Even people who claim to be not religious believe this. We've been told by churches, by our parents, by authority figures, and we're still being told this. It's utter nonsense. Oh, it frustrates me no living in to hear this and to hear this affirmed by people in this movement when we teach oneness. And yet they say God's, separate from us. All kinds of other stuff. It just frustrates me. And then along comes Holmes, and he's telling us just the opposite. And yet there's some folks who just can't hear that. So I've got some other quotes for you from some other people that I consider to be wise, people that I consider to be luminaries, who are voicing this truth that we are one with God. Here's one of my favorites from Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Here's one from Eckhart Tolle. I know there's some Eckhart Tolle fans out there. He says, you are the universe. You are not in the universe. You are the universe. Wayne Dyer. Recognize first and foremost that you are not here as only a human being. And Joseph Campbell. You knew I had to throw some Joseph Campbell in there. God is a metaphor for that which transcends all levels of intellectual thought. God just is. It's a metaphor for us. We can think intellectually till the cows come home. This is much more than thinking stuff. This is much more than intellectual stuff. This is feeling stuff. This is knowing stuff. Get this concept that you are a unique and individualized manifestation of God, and you will have the means to live a life beyond your wildest dreams, a life filled with joy and peace. Get it that you are a godling, an individualized expression of the universe, here to fulfill its desire for you to express as it by embodying love, light, peace, power, joy, and beauty. So we get to be those things. We get to be love. We get to be light. We get to be peace. We get to be power. We get to be joy, and we get to be beauty. We get to be those things. We get to believe that we have the same power as God, and we get to own that power. Do this, and you've got it nailed. You've nailed the way it works. The thing itself is God, and the way it works in our life is that we are God also, but we have to know that and believe it. And that's what I wish to convey to you today, that as much as we believe to be true about ourselves, that's our reality. And what we think about any given circumstance in our lives provides us with powerful clues to our beliefs. And when we know what our beliefs are, we can change them if we discover they're no longer serving us. So you might have a belief that there's no way that you can be one with God to the extent that I'm describing it here. Explore that. Explore how that belief is limiting you. And then I want to further explore with you ways to clear that emotional and mental clutter in order to make room for new possibilities. And as I do this, I'd like you to consider this both on a personal level for yourself only, as well as within your communities and our country as a whole, particularly right now. So I've been dancing around this little suggestion that we look at our beliefs and we change them if they're limiting us. And whenever I suggest, this is absolutely amazing to me, and sometimes I find it quite humorous. Whenever I suggest that folks change their thinking in order to make way for the new in their life, I get one of two responses. The first one is shame. It's always shame. They say, "Oh, you mean the way I've been thinking is wrong? How can that be?" No, 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 it's not wrong. It just doesn't serve you anymore. Was right for a really long time. There's a reason why you think the way you do. There's a reason why you've believed the way you do. But we grow and we change. And as we grow and we change, we're not those little kids anymore. We don't have the same beliefs. We get to be different. And when we become different, those old beliefs and thoughts, they just don't serve us anymore. There's no shame in that. Come on, folks. There's no shame in that. No shame, no blame. Just take those words out of your vocabulary. But they don't work for us anymore. And so we can release with gratitude. Because I got news for you. Some of those old ways of thinking and being and believing and showing up in the world that I had for a really long time, I am so grateful for those. Because they literally kept me alive for many years in my life. But then I grew and I changed. And I realized that being those old ways and thinking in those old terms simply wasn't going to work for me anymore. So I did what I'm asking you to do. I released those old ways with love and gratitude and began to open up into something new. So there's another thing that comes up sometimes when I ask people to change. And this is also kind of funny to me sometimes, although sometimes it's really, really sad. So, you know how when there's an example of abuse in a couple and the abusee absolutely refuses to leave the abuser? Studies have shown, research has shown that the reason for that is that because they are more afraid of the unknown than they are of the known. Even though the known is really, really bad, they are so afraid of it that they can't imagine anything else. And so they stay with their abuser. This is the other place that people quite frequently resist changing their thoughts and their beliefs. They don't want to go into the unknown. Now, this is where we might want to take a look at what our faith is going on with us. Our faith might need a little bit of strengthening because if we have faith, we have no problem stepping in the unknown because we know it's going to be good, whatever it is. But if we don't have faith, we're going to have some fear of that unknown. And so we're going to dig in our heels and say, nope, ain't going to do that. Not going to change. Not going to change. So if you're in this crowd that isn't going to change because even though you don't like the status quo, you don't know what's going to be like in the new, and you're like, nope, ain't going to go there. We're just going to keep it the way it is. Might want to investigate how your faith is doing these days. Do some spiritual practices to nurture that faith and enlarge it. So those are the two blocks to changing our thoughts and our beliefs. And I'm going to change gears a little bit here and say that, yes, we can be influenced by circumstances, just like I've been influenced by the absolute chaos and icky stuff and terrible things going on in our country. And I just dropped into this place of anger and despair and fear and hopelessness. And oh, I couldn't I couldn't get out of it for a couple of weeks. I was obsessed with it. I still am to some extent, but I've gotten back to balance a little bit. And I'm not going to talk about that right now. Never mind. So we can be influenced by outside circumstances. But here's the key with this thing that I'm talking about here. Our true power lies not in controlling all that stuff that's going on out there. Do we have to speak up? Yes. Do we have to fight what's happening in our country? Yes. Do we have to be aware of what's going on in our country? Yes. Do we have to do what we can to make other people aware? Yes. But our true power lies not in controlling external conditions, but in mastering our thoughts and our beliefs about those conditions. And here's the deal. I've got this little slow cooker thought process going on in here. And I know that things weren't working well in this country before. Nobody was really happy with anything that was going on. And perhaps it's taking a disaster like this to force us to look at what we really want to see happen in this country. I want a full and complete elimination of all of the systemic culture that makes racism and misogyny and bigotry possible. I want racism, misogyny, and bigotry to go away. And I happen to believe that that is not pie in the sky. I want to retain our system of government, but I don't like being overburdened with governmental laws and rules and regulations. I'd like to be able to have the dignity to make my own decisions. A real simple example, seat belts. If I'm in a car by myself, driving along, I get to make the choice as to whether or not to wear a seatbelt. Not some insurance company, not some lobbyist that wants to make more money by forcing us to wear seatbelts. There's cattywampus stuff going on here. But I can't control those outside conditions. What I can control is my own thinking and my own beliefs. And remember that it's not one thought, it's a pattern of thoughts, because it's the pattern of thoughts that shape our beliefs. And it's our beliefs and those patterns of thoughts that create the conditions in our lives. So we shift from a reactive, negative mindset to one of intentionality. And by doing so, we transform our lives. This shift in awareness allows us to align more closely with that creative power within us. And I'll give you a really perfect example. So when I realized that I was sabotaging my own life and my own sense of being useful in the world to myself and others by obsessing on all the icky stuff that's going on out there, I had to change my routine and stop being on social media so much, stop reading the news so much. I've never watched TV news, so that wasn't an issue. I recommend you don't watch TV news, by the way. I had to change my whole routine. And so I went back to what I used to do many, many years ago. I started reading my daily readers first thing every morning. And I would keep reading. I keep reading my daily readers until I find one that just gets it for me, fixes me, moves me back into where I need to be to fully and completely serve myself and the world around me as a minister. And then I set my intention for the day. So I had to change my consciousness with this. I had to actually move away from what I had been focusing on and move into a new area of focus. So that's one thing I did with this thing. The other thing is started to notice how I was reacting. And remember that a reaction is different than a response. And that stuff out there, it happens. Life happens. It is in our reactions that 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 things play out in our lives. We can learn to respond. We can read another headline or talk to someone else and find out something new that's going on out there and get all agitated all over again and huff and puff and have a hissy fit and do all that stuff. And I'd like to suggest a different way of doing things. Pause. Pause and take a deep breath. And bring yourself back to whatever it was your intention for the day was. That's why we set those intentions. So we can pause and bring ourselves back to them when something throws us off track. And once we pause and we move back to our intention, then we can intelligently and with discernment decide what is our response to be. Then we can decide if our perceptions of life are limiting us or expanding us. And again, we can do this on a personal level, but we can also apply this for our community and for our country. The other thing to remember is that one thought does not change or manifest as an experience. It's the pattern of thinking. Again, remember, it's the pattern of thoughts. So it behooves you to examine what your pattern of thinking is, because that'll lead you to some beliefs. You'll probably find some in there that need to be changed. So I know I've laid a lot of stuff on you in this thing about the way it works. Basically, it works through us, but only as much as we allow it to work. And the more we can believe in it, that thing itself, the more we can believe in it, the better off we'll be, and the more expansive our life will be. So I've got a selection of readings here from this section in the Signs of Mind textbook. These are pretty cool. These are all Ernest Holmes quotes. The thing, then, works for us by working through us and is us always. It cannot work for us in any other way. It spreads itself over the whole universe and shouts at us from every angle, but it can become power to us only when we recognize it as power. Therefore, our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. So it's not a question of its willingness, nor of its ability. It's entirely a question of our own receptivity. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? Here's another quote. We are thinking and willing and knowing and conscious centers of life. We are surrounded by, immersed in, and there is flowing through us a creative something. Call it whatever you will. The sum total of all of our thought, will, purpose, and belief creates a tendency in this law that causes it to react to us according to the sum total of that belief. Do you see what it's saying there? That law, that thing itself, it reacts to us according to the sum total of the belief. Another quote. Then, knowing that the thing can work for us only through us, let us begin to accept today more good than we experienced yesterday, and to know that we shall reap a harvest of fulfilled desires. The time must come. And I'm inserting my own little quote in here. The time has come. The time is now. When we shall have left the apparent evil behind, when it shall be rolled up like a scroll and numbered with the things that were once thought to be. And so that's my affirmation for you today, folks. My throat is quite dry, sorry. That's my affirmation for you today, folks. The time is here. The time is now. We are now knowing that we are a part of this thing that is, this stuff that is. And it is a part of us. We are one beautiful, whole, complete unit. And we are now expanding our beliefs and our thoughts, getting new beliefs and new ways of thinking to allow even more of that power to live and move and breathe and work through us and make our lives better than ever. So that's my knowingness for you folks today. And I thank you so much for listening and for your support. And I am knowing Fearlessly Feral Living for me and for you. Fearlessly Feral Living is a focus ministry of Centers for Spiritual Living, and your financial support is fully tax deductible. You can support our podcast by going to Buzzsprout. The link is in the show notes, and sign up. There's a little link on there on each podcast episode that says support the podcast. I'm also now on Substack. That's brand new, like within the last few days. I'm on Substack now. So you can find me on Substack and subscribe. Of course, you can subscribe for free, but you could also subscribe for as little as $8 a month. Every little bit helps, guys. Every little bit helps. And you can do a one-time donation by going to our PayPal page. And all these links and more are at Fearlessly Feral Living, our website, fearlesslyferal.org. So I thank you. I am knowing Fearlessly Feral Living for you and for me. And I wish you all the best.